You're with Julian on the Brown Note, and I'm seeing a lot of really offensive things from friends and in the media, which you do a lot, which is when a political party goes through scandal after scandal, there's this attempt to say that it's all politics and that it is both parties and it is equal and it's a problem with politics. Rubbish, and that is so offensive. Scott Morrison is saying, the issue is of sexism, misogyny and abuse is bipartisan, and lots of people in the media have been, as they always do, seeking out a story where they can say Labour did it too. Now, this is incredibly offensive to the women that have been affected by it. For it to be bipartisan, it would have to be comparable, not one case from Labour with 100 cases at the Liberals. I actually had an argument with someone online today about this and listed about 10 different cases that are all in the media for the Liberals at the moment. And they went, yeah, but what about Bill Shorten? Well, I was like, well, you've just brought up a case that happened in 2014. One case you've brought up in 6 years. It enables the Liberals to get away with it. That's why they never change. Because they're never held accountable by the media, a common theme of this show. Sexual abuse, misogyny, rape and anti-feminism isn't bipartisan at all. It's a cultural, historic, systemic part of the Liberal Party and their affiliates like the Nationals and their right-wing pals in the media. Labour have been attacked now because of Nicole Flint coming out, a Liberal MP who's quit, she said, over suffering sexism and blame Labour. Now, this is what happened. Her offices were sprayed by not Labour, by other people. The organisation Get Up are accused of hassling her, not Labour, and she was stalked by somebody who also wasn't Labour. She concedes that none of these things happened directly because of Labour, but she blames Labour, specifically blaming Anthony Albanese for not doing enough, for not condemning it enough. Now, why isn't she blaming the Liberals for not supporting her enough? And where was her support for the Liberal staffer that had said she'd been raped? Or for any of the other women that have come forward and accused Liberals of attacking them? She's never offered any support for any of these people. She's been silent, but then she comes out and she starts slamming Labour on the way out the door because of other people's actions. Currently, the Liberals have an ex-senior advisor who was sacked from his job after allegedly raping Brittany Higgins and is now accused of sexually assaulting or raping 5 women. He was given 2 references from the Liberal Party for his new work. Brittany Higgins has become the biggest rape scandal to have happened, largely because she was a staff member of the Liberals and had been raped at work and had been compelled to hide it to protect the Liberal Party for the 2019 election. Huge numbers of the Liberal Party were obviously up to their neck in it. The Attorney General, the highest lawman in Australia, is currently on leave because he's accused of rape. After last year's Four Corners expose said that he was a lifelong misogynist, and also that his friend Alan Tudge was, who has since been accused of having an illicit affair with a female staff member who now is suing the Liberal Party for losing her job. Craig Kelly, Frank Zumbo, his chief of staff, is accused by multiple women over multiple years of abuse, both in rage and even the way down to grabbing a 16-year-old girl's thigh who was in the car alone with him. Just days ago, another Liberal staff member was sacked for a video that emerged of him masturbating over a female MP's desk. This is not bipartisan. These stories happen all the time to the Liberal Party and once in a blue moon to Labour. You have to be blind not to see this as a pattern. Even if treatment by the Liberal Party and the press that like them of female politicians is famously sexist. David Leon Helm, I never say his name right, David Leon Helm, Liberal senator or ex-Liberal senator, has just had his conviction for defamation for sexually abusive language towards Greens Senator Sarah Hanson upheld an $120,000 defamation suit. This is systemic in the Liberal Party. Anti-feminism is part of the Liberal culture, not Labour. Labour had the first female Prime Minister who was famously sexist, suffered sexist abuse throughout her time in office, and called out the next Liberal Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, for his dinosaur sexist views, and gave one of the most famous speeches of the last 20 years in Parliament on misogyny. The next Liberal Prime Minister was Tony Abbott, who has famous dinosaur views on women, stood happily in front of signs about Julia Gillard, our female Prime Minister, saying ditch the witch, and Bob Brown's bitch, and stood by broadcasters like Alan Jones, who says she should be tied up in a sack and thrown into the sea. And he has a historically bad view of women and has made numerous comments over the years which are incredibly offensive to women. I'll see if I've got this one, because this was a doozy, and I just saw it on the way in. But he is a pattern of a liberal, certain kind of person in the Liberal Party who has made numerous comments and holds obviously deeply sexist views about women over the years. And I don't think I can find it, which is a shame, because he just said this whole litany of things which is about how he really feels about women. Here we go. This is Tony Abbott in 2010. I think it would be folly to expect that women will ever dominate or even approach equal representation in large numbers of areas simply because their aptitudes, abilities and interests are different for psychological reasons. That's how these people think about women. They have these conservative views about women, but they also combine it with this very toxic entitlement. They feel entitled to the positions of power, and they feel entitled to a woman's body. And we've seen this arise in the posh public boys' schools, where we keep seeing these 16-year-old kids on school coaches chanting sexist slogans. This is where it starts. Their role models are these sexist people in the Liberal Party. That's who they grow up with. They use terms like feminazis from a young age. They hate feminists. They become men's rights activists. They have this entitlement to women that we see results in rape, in actual rape, because they're so entitled to it. And they're fostered and supported once they come into the Liberal Party fold. Someone like Christian Porter spent his lifetime in the Liberal Party, despite a continual drip feed amongst his colleagues where he was notorious for his views on women, and from former colleagues who said that he's been a lifelong misogynist, and the fact that the spectre of this rape had hung over him, he rose to potentially becoming Prime Minister. And when these kids are at school and they watch who rises through the ranks in the Liberal Party, that's how this entitlement and misogyny is fomented. It isn't bipartisan. Stop saying it is. It is nothing to do with Labour, because obviously the odd case will happen to Labour. This is a continual treadmill of these events happening, and we're only finding out more and more of them because people are starting to come forward about them, but they've always been there. And when you hear these very misogynistic politicians and journalists talk in a manner that's so dismissive of women for being women, or behaving in a manner that makes them entitled to their bodies, you know where this is coming from. It's a culture. It's a toxic anti-woman culture that is part of the Liberal Party culture and has been for years. It has probably got worse. It has got worse with the same kind of toxic right-wing anger that has fomented their policies on a range of issues, such as refugees or climate change, or hating the Greens, or hating liberals and lefties and so on. This is part of their toxic culture, and a big part of their culture is anti-woman. So stop saying it's Labour. It's not Labour. This massive problem we've got in politics with misogyny, sexism, physical abuse of women, sexual abuse of women, and abuse of female politicians is Liberal, not Labour.